Ladies and gentlemen from the Indian and international press, thank you very much for taking the time to visit with me this morning. I have with me today the Minister of Foreign Affairs, our National Security Advisor, my advisor on Cultural Affairs, our Ambassador to India, the Young Ambassador to India, Chief of Protocol, and most important of all, my spokesperson here with us, young too. My trip to India wasn't to visit the government. This trip was to visit the lovely professional university near Jalandhar, and they were kind to confer upon me an honorary doctorate degree in a huge ceremony of the graduation of the university. I was impressed that a university could expand so much in a short span of time, in less than a decade. I don't know if you have been to that university. So it's a huge university, 30,000 students, and a good infrastructure and good buildings and tastefully done buildings. The President of India was very kind to give me the doctorate degree, to award it to me. Of course, while in India, the government of India is very kind to receive you and also to give you meetings. I was yesterday with both the President again and with the Prime Minister. We engaged in really very broad discussion on issues related to Afghanistan-India relations, to the region, to the continued presence, if agreements are arrived between us and the United States and NATO, of NATO and the United States after 2014, and the implications of that for Afghanistan and for the region. We discussed also with India, within the strategic partnership agreement that we have with India, the broadening of cooperation in all walks of life, especially the continuation of India's assistance to the economic upliftment of the Afghan people, education for the Afghan youth, and the provision of training and within the means of India of equipment to the Afghan forces. These were the broad areas of our discussion. Of course, we were there yesterday for nearly 4 hours or 5 hours. So we had plenty of time to go to all sorts of issues, political, non-political, including chit-chat. So I thought I should brief you about, in general terms, the visit. Now, I'm sure you have a lot of questions on Afghanistan and the current state of affairs there and your sense of the future, and I will be more than happy to engage with you in detail. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Excellency, please allow me first, on behalf of all the foreign journalists here, to thank you and thank your embassy and your press attaché, who was very kind to accommodate the maximum number that we could bring to this. My question is, after the pullout of the combat forces, what is the assessment of your government on the real internal situation? I mean, we have example of Iraq at the moment, where we could see the sectarian violence, the civil war have started there. Do you have all this fear in your mind, and what is the contingency plan you plan for it? Thank you.
Sir, Iraq is a very unfortunate situation, and we are pained to see the way Iraq is suffering. I can tell you with a strong measure of confidence that Afghanistan will not see that. Even when there was this group instability in Afghanistan, where groups were engaged with one another, the conflict was not sectarian in Afghanistan. And in the past 10 years, you saw that Afghanistan became the home for all Afghans immediately once the hurdles were removed. You have all walks of life there. You have the former communists, you have the former mujahideen, you have some of the Taliban, you have men, women, tribal elders, the intellectuals, everybody enjoying the freedoms of today, democracy and sitting in the parliament. Yes, but we do fear the continuation of terrorism, as it has been affecting us for years now. Would that say a threat not only to Afghanistan, but also a threat to Pakistan and a threat to India? In our region, these three countries are the most affected. And it is this topic, this issue, that is a major point of discussions between us and India, between us and the United States, and also between us and Pakistan. So if there is any fear, the fear is of radicalism, of the spread of radicalism, of terrorism, and this issue cannot be addressed alone by the West or the West's presence in Afghanistan. This is more an issue for us, the region, to address, and more specifically an issue for us and Pakistan to address.
Can I ask an internal political question? Could you just say categorically whether you see any possibility of remaining as president after the 2014 elections? Is there any circumstance in which you think that would be possible?
Definitely not. No circumstances should allow me to stay as the president. And I will not allow it to happen. For two clear reasons. One, I'm exhausted. Really, thoroughly exhausted. And I like to be retired. Two, why would I ruin my legacy by staying on? And also take an opportunity away from Afghanistan for becoming an institutionalized order of democracy and continuity of our constitution. Therefore, it's neither good for me nor for Afghanistan. Not at all.
Your Excellency, I'm Suhasini Haider from CNN IBN. You said you spoke with Prime Minister Manmohan Singh about the possibilities, especially post-2014, of the possible continued presence of NATO forces there. I wanted to ask you if you also discussed with him the specific possibility of Indian troops being stationed in Afghanistan in any sort of peacekeeping capacity, and what the response was.
No, we did not discuss the stationing of Indian troops in Afghanistan, and it's not needed either, but we did discuss the all manners of support in training and equipment that India can provide to Afghanistan as a tested and trusted friend of Afghanistan within the context of the strategic partnership that we have together. No, issue of troops in Afghanistan was not discussed, and there is no need for that.
Mr. President, I'm the sole representative, I think, of think tanks in India over here.
Welcome, ma'am.
And I'm hoping you may allow me the privilege of asking two questions.
Please.
My first question was on the issue of training and military arrangements. We know that a lot of the training is going to be directed at internal security. Is there also a discussion of what kinds of training are required for Afghanistan to control its own borders, and whether that is being discussed at a coordinated level? And the second question was, what would you wish to see from the reconciliation process, and in which way do you think friends and allies of Afghanistan can help you in that?
Exactly. There's a tradition, ma'am, between Afghanistan and India of the Afghan army and police having been trained in India. Now, it's in continuation of that tradition. Even 40 years ago, there were Afghan army and police officers getting trained in India. There was a break in between after the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. 10 years ago, we re-established that relationship, which we enhanced by the signing of the strategic partnership the year before. So the training that India will be providing to Afghanistan is to the institutions of the Afghan government, the army and the police. The intention is to bring back to Afghanistan stronger military security institutions by educating Afghan officers and by training Afghan officers. Just like in India, we have similar arrangements with Britain, where the United Kingdom will be is already working on establishing a Sandhurst type military academy in Kabul. I think the building is already there for it. Huh? The building is already assigned to it. We also have, with the help of the United States, the Afghan Military Academy, a type of military university, established, the headquarters of which, the schools of which I visited some months ago. So it's a broad arrangement with allies like India to bring back to Afghanistan the necessary institutions for the country's protection and defense. It will be in line of all similar activities. The second question, ma'am, on the peace process, it's a very, very important question. This has been a priority for me for years now. You have never heard me of fighting, of speaking of fighting, but you've always heard me of talking of peace. Even when my brother was assassinated, the next morning I called the Taliban brothers, because they are countrymen with us, those who are Afghans, by the way, those who are Afghans. There are others who are not Afghans. Those who are Afghans, I've called them brothers. And when President Rabbani was assassinated, who was seeking peace by the man who came in the name of seeking peace with us, still, I call them brothers. So peace is an endless effort by us. It will not end. It will continue till peace comes to us. And in this spirit, we had the Afghan Jirga for peace 2 years ago. The result of that was the establishment of the High Peace Council. The High Peace Council keeps working for peace. Then there was the US initiative of the Doha office for the Taliban, which we have endorsed. And we have also been engaging with Pakistan for the peace process in Afghanistan, because it is going to be very, very difficult and cumbersome a process for peace without Pakistan's help. Therefore, a very necessary element for the Afghan peace process is Pakistan's cooperation, because Pakistan has influence over the Taliban, because they have their, residence there, to put it mildly. Therefore, Pakistan's cooperation is a must, and these are the avenues that we are following. And I hope that we will be able to get to peace as soon as possible.
President Karzai, where is Mullah Omar at the moment?
Mullah Muhammad Umar.
Yeah. And have you had any back-channel communications with him? And one other quick question, where is the Al-Qaeda leader, Ayman al-Zawahiri?
Well, we all know where they are, but why would you ask me a question that we all know already the answer for? I would have answered this question from Kabul more directly. So ask me back in Kabul.
Can you narrow it down a little bit more?
They are in the region, but ask me in Kabul.
Does it begin with Q?
Next question, please.
It can begin with any word.
Post-2014 withdrawal, the region has to come to terms with terrorism, and especially Pakistan, and Pakistan has to come to terms with that as well. Now, in the light of a new government in Pakistan, with Nawaz Sharif going to be the new Prime Minister, how do you see relations between Afghanistan and Pakistan developing?
Ma'am, this is, by the way, a very important question for both India and Afghanistan and Pakistan. In the past 65 years, no Afghan government has had as extensive, expansive a relationship as my government had and tried with Pakistan. I visited our good neighbor 19 times. Also, the Pakistani leaders visited Afghanistan many, many times. There were numerous exchanges of parliamentarians and government officials between the two countries. The civilian government in Pakistan, led by President Zardari, did its best for a stronger, better relationship. They have suffered more than we are suffering from terrorism as well. I had a very good meeting with Prime Minister designate Nawaz Sharif. Last year when I was in Islamabad, he was kind to invite me to the Punjab House and offer me a lovely dinner. And we engaged in a broad conversation about relations with Afghanistan and relations with India. No doubt, I found him to be very much inclined to the best possible relations with India. I also found him to be very much aware of the dangers terrorism and radicalism is posing to Pakistan itself. And in that vein, the need to cooperate with Afghanistan. So I hope very, very much for Afghanistan, for Pakistan, and for India that the new Prime Minister of Pakistan will be able to deliver what he so very much wishes to achieve.
My name is John Murray from the German press agency. Could I ask a Germany-related question? Chancellor Merkel was in your country 12 days ago, and the palace was informed just before her touchdown that she would actually be visiting. Also, this was, according to German government sources, because of security concerns. This was her 6th her fifth visit since 2007, and only once she actually came to Kabul to see you 6 years ago. Do you consider this an appropriate way for the German government to treat a sovereign Afghan government?
Well, it's not only German government doing that, it's other governments doing that as well. And we understand it. Chancellor Merkel was visiting German troops. And German troops are in northern Afghanistan, in Kunduz and Mazar Sharif and neighboring provinces. The same is done by other governments who visit their troops in Afghanistan. Germany has been a very strong friend of Afghanistan for over a century. And that friendship is valued and understood very well by the Afghan people. So no, we don't mind at all. We understand that a leader of a country has to visit troops abroad, and that does not necessarily mean that they should also come to Kabul. So this was not a visit to Afghanistan. This was a visit to German troops, and we understand it as such.
As you know, our troops are stationed down in Uruzgan, and in recent times they've had some criticism. There was a Tufts University study last year which actually suggested that they had helped to destabilise the region and that their presence was very much resented in that region. There's been an announcement that we're pulling out at the end of the year. So my two questions are, do you believe that the Australians have done more harm than good, and are they leaving too early?
Let's not make this Australia specific, the answer on my part. Let's make it general, applicable to the whole presence of international forces in Afghanistan. The international forces in Afghanistan have had contribution. They've also had the side effects. The contribution has been the training of the Afghan forces, the economic assistance, the part of it that has reached Afghanistan. The side effect has been that the war on terror was fought in the wrong place. Terrorism was not to be found in Afghanistan in the first place, or the sanctuaries of it in the first place. So as the war on terror was not to be found in Afghan villages, in Afghan homes, the conduct of this war from the very beginning was done not where it should have been done. Therefore, that has caused resentment and anger in Afghanistan and the Afghan people. We lost so many of our civilians. The loss of property and destruction of property, all that. That's not only the Australians actually have had a very minimal negative impact where they were serving. So I can answer you in these terms. And that's why the withdrawal of the international forces from Afghanistan, in our view, is a good thing for them and for us, the Afghan people. We believe that there will be more stability in Afghanistan when they leave. We believe there will be more peace in Afghanistan when they leave. We believe that those attacking Afghanistan will find it hard to attack Afghanistan, and when they do, the Afghan people will fight them much more effectively.
Sir, this is Pranab Samanta from Indian Express. You spoke about Pakistan. I would like to take you to another neighbor of yours, which is Iran. We know that Iran does not have the most comfortable of relationships with the United States.
Yes.
And which is, United States has a major role in Afghanistan's future. India is also planning a transit arrangement through the Chabahar port, developing the Chabahar port and trying to develop an alternate route into Afghanistan.
Yes.
How do you view the cooperation with Iran, the role of Iran, and bringing Iran into the matrix of Afghan's future?
We support the development of Chabahar port. We will give all our support and endorsement to India contributing to the upliftment of that port and to operationalizing it for the purposes of transit and trade. We've also indicated that to the Iranian government. I wanted this to be part of my remarks when I just made my remarks, but I thought I should leave it for me in Kabul. I'm glad you asked the question. So we are for Chabahar port. It has our full endorsement. Afghanistan conducted a very clear and categorical relationship with Iran, of which the United States was fully informed. And we did the same with the United States, of which the government of Iran was fully informed. And that's why we managed to keep both countries engaged in Afghanistan. And that's how we managed to keep both Iran and the United States keeping Afghanistan out of their differences in all other areas. And we will continue to do the same. We view Iran as a valued neighbor of Afghanistan, as a country with whom we have lived for centuries and will continue to live for centuries. And that is also something that we have conveyed very clearly to the United States. We've also conveyed to the Iranian government that the United States presence in Afghanistan is very much needed now, that Afghan people need to have the backing of the international community, particularly in this regard of the West, that our economy, our security, our governance and the build-up of governance in Afghanistan and institutions needs that support from the West, and Iran should understand. And they do. So I believe clarity and transparency has been a successful element in keeping the two countries engaged positively in Afghanistan.
Mr. President, what is your feeling right now about limits on American Special Forces, A? B, how do you balance your relationships between Pakistan and India? Obviously, it's a difficult triangle. How do you manage it?
I got the second part of the question. The first part was immunity. You're talking about immunity?
What is the limitations on American Special Forces that you were talking about recently?
Well, us in the United States have been having differences of opinion on the conduct of the war on terror. And this difference of opinion emerged almost 7 years ago, 8 years ago, publicly. Before that, we had this difference, but it was away from public debate. We have been telling the United States that the war on terror cannot be fought in Afghan villages, that the war on terror should rather go to the sanctuaries and to the training grounds and to the motivational factors and to the financial contributors of terrorism, that the Afghan homes and Afghan villages must not only be not harmed, but rather, because they are victims of terrorism, they should be helped and reconstructed. In this regard, of particular sensitivity to us has been night raids, an operation by special forces in Afghanistan, which we opposed for years, and on the prevention of which we engaged with the United States almost daily. I'm happy that we have now reached certain agreements with the United States, by which night raids since about last year or 2 years ago has been suspended, and if ever it's done by the Afghan forces. And the special forces, if you're referring to the incident in Wardak province of Afghanistan, that was a particular case of human rights abuse by the militias that the United States had employed, were in their service, that the local population informed us about. And then I decided to remove the US Special Forces from Wardak province, and they eventually complied. The second question of India-Pakistan relationship. Afghanistan is a sovereign country, and like all other sovereign countries, has the right to choose its friends and engage in relationship with friends. Pakistan is a neighbor and a close neighbor. The people of Pakistan have given us refuge for 30 years in their homes and villages, for which the Afghan people are extremely grateful. India is a traditional friend and ally, and has been of tremendous assistance to Afghanistan in the past, and particularly in the past 10 years. Afghanistan values this relationship with India, and Afghanistan will expand in all manners this relationship with India, and that's why we signed the strategic partnership agreement with India. But our relations with India will not be at the cost of Pakistan or a cause of worry for Pakistan. We will have our own particularly strong relations with Pakistan, for which we are working very, very hard. I hope we can reach it someday. And we will have our own relations with India. Nor will our relations with Pakistan affect our relations with India, nor should it, the other way around, affect Pakistan. So we will keep an independent approach to relations between the two countries. One will not be at the cost of the other.
Mr. President, the strategic agreement you signed in 2011 with India talks about training, equipping, and capacity building. There has been some movement on training and capacity building, but perhaps not as much on equipping. Is this a source of frustration for you, and did you receive any assurances during your current visit? And similarly to the Indian side, do you get the sense that they are frustrated that they're not being kept in the loop adequately about the peace talks with Taliban and the eventual shape the political settlement is taking?
Well, we understand where India can help, where India cannot help. And we respect that. All countries naturally will help within the means that they have. India has gone beyond its means in the past 10 years. India traditionally is not a donor country, but India donated over $2 billion to Afghan reconstruction and effective reconstruction. Every dollar that India sent to Afghanistan was spent there precisely on the project assigned for. So India has been a tremendous contributor to Afghanistan. I believe one can with confidence say that India is proportionate to its economy and its own needs, the biggest contributor to Afghanistan. So we are grateful for that. And we will allow India and respect India's choices in the manner that they want to provide help to Afghanistan.
And on the other question of whether they have been adequately kept in the loop about peace talks.
On the peace process, we have kept India informed of the conduct of the peace process. Of course, India had concerns with regard to not the peace process, but with regard to an arrangement by which terrorism and radicalism would be allowed to flourish in the name of the peace process, which is a legitimate concern, a concern that we have too. But we then explained to our Indian friends on how we are seeking a peace process and of the definitions that we have for the peace process. Meaning that peace with the Taliban, improved relations with Pakistan, stronger relations with Pakistan, and contribution from Pakistan to the peace process would not mean reversing the gains in Afghanistan, would not mean aborting the constitution in Afghanistan, would not mean walking back on democracy in Afghanistan, would not mean walking back on the gains for women in Afghanistan or for education in Afghanistan, would not mean allowing an obscurantist mindset to creep into Afghanistan again. No. Now, I believe in the past 5 months, India understands clearly that while we are seeking peace, we are also moving forward. Is the movement forward that India was concerned about, and that assurance has been given.
Mr. President? Hi, I'm Krista Moore from Time Magazine. I wonder if I could just shift slightly to ask you a little bit about some economic questions. I'm wondering, the mining sector is often talked about in terms of, being a huge employer, but it won't really get started in earnest for another couple of decades as a major source of employment for people. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what concrete steps the government is going to take to try to create more job opportunities for people in the next 10 years, let's say.
Afghanistan has perhaps the best potentials of the region by the fact of the resources that we have, the mineral resources, the gas and oil resources. We have just revised our mining laws, refined them, made them more investor friendly, and incorporated into those laws stringent elements of transparency. Certain mines have already been contracted to China. We're working with India on the iron ore mines of Afghanistan, which are among the best in the world. We are among the richest in the world in the rare earth materials that the advanced technologies need. Our gas and oil resources are pretty good. Perhaps gas is a lot more than we know of. We are a transit hub, a transportation, a connection point in the region. Peace and the return of further stability to Afghanistan will enhance market activity in the country much further, and that will definitely see more jobs. Of course, we have recognized the difficulties of a totally free market economy in Afghanistan. I'm not suggesting that we will go back on that. I'm not suggesting that we will reverse to a more controlled economy, no. But we will make adjustments. So there are industries, there are industrial activities where the free market cannot engage, where the Afghan state will help establish and run in joint venture with the private sector. That will bring us more opportunities for employment and a labor force.
So, hello, it's Andrew Buncombe of The Independent. So one of the constants of the last decade have been the criticisms of your government over corruption. Yes. Indeed, some of those allegations have been levelled at members of your own family.
Yes, yes.
Are there areas where you think you have received insufficient credit for trying to tackle corruption? And at the same time, do you think there are areas where criticism that you have done insufficient to tackle corruption are valid?
This is a subject that I've repeatedly faced and addressed. Afghanistan, if you're still using the terms of first, second, and third world, I don't know if it's in fashion nowadays. Is it in the press? You don't use those terms anymore? Well, let me use it. We are, in those references, a third world country, underdeveloped in all aspects of life, gone through 30 years of wars, interventions, and upheavals. We lost 500,000 of our educated elite to migration to the West and the United States. Of a country that was barely 20 million people, you lose 500,000 people to migration. And the destruction of the economy and the destruction of government and all relevant institutions. 10 years ago, we began to rebuild all of that from total scratch. With it came the money from the West and the contractual mechanisms of the West to a country that was not ready at all in terms of its institutions. So two factors were there for corruption in Afghanistan. One was the lack of state institutions, governmental bodies. Two, these very faulty, very superficially awarded contract mechanisms, the award of contracts by the West, especially by the United States. That brought about corruption in Afghanistan, no doubt, massive corruption. We divide it in two categories, therefore. Category one, the corruption in the provision of government services. Category two, the corruption brought into Afghanistan by American and Western contracts and contractual mechanisms. The corruption in the delivery of services is minor, negligible by all standards in comparison to the corruption caused by contracts. I will give an example of contracts. The private security firms that the West employed in Afghanistan not only became a huge source of corruption, but they also became a huge source of instability and insecurity in Afghanistan. And it took me 5 years to bring them under some degree of control and abolishment, for which I was attacked in the Western press in various manners. I believe that the criticism in Western press of Afghanistan and of the use of corruption as a tool against Afghanistan has been driven more politically than with an intention of correction. That's how the real world is. And now I have understood to live with it. I can talk for hours, on this subject. The Western criticism, well, if, you see, let me put it this way. If Denmark criticizes corruption in Afghanistan, I would take it truly as a criticism meant to bring improvement. If Norway does the same, I would accept it and work on. But if the United States does that, I will simply laugh at it. Did I answer?
Could you kindly elaborate on the
absolutely. China has been engaged with us consistently in the past 10 years. It's been contributing to Afghan reconstruction. It's been the first to come and invest in Afghanistan, the private sector, in the mining sector. Politically, we've had considerably stronger engagement with them than we've had in terms of, assistance to Afghanistan financially. We are happy to see this stronger engagement between India and China as well. We believe that sooner or later, we, the people of this region, have to take the burden of resolving our difficulties and our problems ourselves. And China and India are two huge quantities in this region and globally. And I hope that the two countries would take more responsibility towards the region and beyond.
Mr. President, one more.
Just very briefly, just the negotiations with the Taliban. You've spoken about your efforts to counter terrorism and to try and make peace even in the most difficult circumstances. Where are the negotiations going? What is actually happening? Because the impression that we get is that not much is happening, and the fighting is continuing, as you mentioned. And if things aren't proceeding in the right direction, what are the obstacles? What is the problem at the moment?
Well, as I answered before, we have contacts with the Taliban. Those contacts are from Afghan to Afghan. The Peace Council has contacts with the Taliban. But a meaningful peace process where there will be a political delivery to the peace in Afghanistan, whereby terrorism and violence in Afghanistan will stop, is actually dependent on cooperation from Pakistan. As they have influence over the Taliban, Pakistani cooperation is the key to a politically successful peace process and key to the end of violence in Afghanistan. Doesn't matter.
Amitabh from NDTV. So, Mr. President, you talked about training and equipment. I just wanted a little elaboration in terms of, you said no troops on the ground needed, yes. But you mentioned the Sandhurst Light Academy in the UK. Will India be training any of your security forces in Afghanistan? And vis-a-vis equipment, the Pakistan border problem, have you talked about equipment in terms of light artillery that you might need, especially in terms of the Gashto incident that took place? Thank you, sir. Kashgar.
India, at this point, is providing us training in India. There is no program of Indian military officers or experts providing training in Afghanistan. So at this stage, the training is conducted in India. But once the Sandhurst Academy is established, Indian officers are welcome to come to the academy and participate with the British and American allies of ours to train and teach Afghan officers, surely. But at this point, that is not happening. The training is entirely done in Indian colleges and military academies.
Sir, is there any chance?
We have a wish list that we have put before the government of India, and now it's up to the government of India and within the means that they have to assist Afghanistan. It's a wish list. Ladies and gentlemen, very kind of you. Thank you.